This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Brendan. Corey's not here. Cody Delmendo. I was going to call you Corey Delmendo for a second. All these Codys and Coreys and all this stuff. Cody's filling in for Corey, and we have a jam-packed episode. A lot to talk about. We have Jed Hoyer news coming from Tom Ricketts. We'll get into maybe some contract discussions. Also with Cody here, my mind is like going without Corey. With Cody here, he sees the chat every single day. He sees replies left and right. He may have the best perspective of like what the fans are thinking right now. So the way I want to break this episode down is half of it, we're going to talk about what Tom Ricketts said about Jed Hoyer's lack of extension and specifically talk about his quotes. And then towards the back end, we'll talk about how the fans are perceiving this. Do they like it? Do they dislike it? Are they fed up? Do they want him gone? And so on. First off, Cody, how you doing? I like your hat, by the way. I never actually got to tell you this in person. I see you wear the hat all the time, but it suits you well.
Thank you. I do love this hat. Obviously, I like our CHGO hats more, but this hat fits me very well, and I don't wear hats forward very much, but this is one of the few hats that I have that
like frames your face.
Yes, well, it frames well,
which is very important. What's behind your left shoulder?
It is a canvas that acknowledges the 2016 World Series.
Okay. Brendan. Which team?
The Chicago Cubs.
The Chicago Cubs. Okay. Yeah. Just making sure. I thought that was a Cubs logo, but I couldn't.
It is.
I couldn't tell.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying. All right.
I am good. Also want to clarify for anyone watching on YouTube. Yes, I'm wearing the exact same shirt I wore on Thursday because we're recording this on a Thursday night.
That's one of the challenges is like doing these at nights. I'm used to doing these like Sunday or mornings or afternoons. My brain is fried right now. Yeah. Absolutely fried. And we have a lovely episode talking about absolutely nothing besides Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer discourse, which is all what we love to talk about. But all being serious here, we do have a lot of interesting quotes from Tom Ricketts. First of which, I want to read this off verbatim. He was asked, is Jed Hoyer going to get an extension? Is it part of the discussion this offseason? To which he responded, quote, I think he's motivated. I know he's driven. Like everyone else here, he works really hard. I think Jed's going to have a great offseason and put us back in the playoffs next year. He's under contract. That's the way I see it. Okay. So no pre-2025 contract is going to be, at least currently, given out to Jed Hoyer. I think it's not surprising based on what we've seen. Some fans do like how the farm system has been growing. They like how Craig Counsell is part of the system. There's encouragement there, even though there's half the fan base who may not like Craig Counsell. But there is a sect of the fan base who do feel optimistic about this front office going forward. But from my perspective, this was always the likely way they proceeded entering 2025. See how the season plays out, in my view. Assess towards the trade deadline, see where things are at farm system wise, the AAA bats, then start thinking, okay, what is the likelihood Jets front office is going to yield stable results now that he has the farm system and AAA so close to the major leagues? And then if it starts looking bad, okay, well, you start planting the seeds and maybe moving on once the season finishes next year.
Yeah, I agree. It's not surprising to me what Tom said in that regard. I don't think any fan should be surprised that Jed Hoyer hasn't got a contract extension. I mean, me, Luke, and Ryan are still taking backlash for giving Jed Hoyer the grade that we gave him.
What did you give him?
I gave him an F.
People giving you backlash for that?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's just for the 2024 season. Like, it's not overall. I think I tweeted a few days ago that, like, overall, since he took over, I guess I'd give him a C because the farm system was in such shambles when he took it, and he's put the organization in a healthier spot. But, I mean, he's definitely not worthy of anything higher than that. I might just be nice giving him a C, considering there hasn't been a playoff appearance under him yet, but for 2024, yeah, I mean, I think he failed this year based off the expectations entering the season. You and Corey talk so much about the projections. We've talked a lot about the projections entering the season, and it was just like the writing was on the wall, man. Like they needed some things to go right in order for that projection to go in the positive direction, and those didn't happen, and they missed the playoffs. And he made some nice moves. Like Shoto was great, a great signing, and trading for Bush, I think, is a creative, good move. But you should be able to make those moves and be able to win if you have like a star player on the team, or something. You needed more. You still entered the season with a projection of 83 wins, right? So I don't know. We talked a ton about it, but to sum it all up, it's like I'm rooting for Jed. I want Jed to put this team in the playoffs, but like I just don't think there's any patience left. I don't have any patience left. It's
Patience from whom? Fans or ownership or who?
I don't have any patience left for this front office.
Well, you have little patience in general, so I know that.
This is okay. In some aspects, I have very little patience. However, Brendan, I think I've been pretty patient with Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins over these last handful of years, because as delusional and optimistic as I can be, I knew that it was going to take a few years for this team to get to be like a real contender. Mm-hmm. And I felt like last offseason, especially when they hired Craig Counsell, quite literally a few days after the World Series ended, I thought that that was a signal or writing on the wall that this team was going to go out and be the big market team that they are. And, like I know the free agent market wasn't very good last offseason, but like be creative with your prospect capital. You just mentioned we got like 8 top 100 prospects. I don't know where any of them are going to play, man. And all these guys on the roster right now are under contract. And it's like people complaining about some of the best players on this team. And it's like they're still giving you good seasons, but people want to see prospects because they just know that those guys aren't going to put the team over the top when they can be great complementary players, like it's just, I just feel like they're in a really tight spot now. I don't know how they get out of it. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason. And, like one move honestly can really cost Jed his job if it doesn't work out. I mean,
yeah,
that's just where it's at. And like, I think a lot of people think that I have just been rooting against Jed this entire time, and that's not true. You can go find old audio since CHGO launched, man. Like I have defended Jed a hell of a lot more than a lot of other people. And I said the day before opening day this season that if they do not make the playoffs, that I would be calling for names. And Jed Hoyer is at the top of the list, man. And if it was up to me, they would have fired him before the trade deadline, and they would have been out looking for someone to put this team over the top, this offseason. And I remember there one recent episode you and Corey did. You guys talked about you just asked the question, I believe, and you said something along the lines of like, him making it past the trade deadline pretty much signals he's getting one more year at least. And now we're entering a lame duck season with a lame duck season for the president of baseball operations going into an offseason where the expectations are going to be even higher than last offseason. And there's just no positive feeling about any of it, man. I don't know how to.
All right, slow down. You're working yourself up.
I'm not even really worked up. I'm just being honest. Like, sure, you want me to be positive for a second? Sure. On one side of the spectrum, you won 83 games. It's not like you won 70 and you have all these holes. You have some flaws, you have some holes, but like you're not far away from being a contender. The question now is like, how do you get there? Because like I've kind of already stated, they have a lot of guys under contract. They have all these prospects, but what do you do with them? And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how they move. Like, I don't know how they turn over the roster a little bit to put it in real contention. Because it's just, if they run it back with the same thing, this ain't gonna work. We've seen it for
Well,
2 years now.
they're not. It just depends, to your point, how they maneuver pieces around.
Yeah.
I think about the front office a lot, and my like, Corey gives me flack for being a numbers guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I swear to God, out of everyone in the studio, I'm the only former baseball player, which is the most ironic thing. I'm a baseball guy. The thing with the front office is the decisions they make. I think us as fans, we overweigh their importance, like each individual decision. If you take a bird's eye view, my perspective of the front office is way more general. And you can learn from Theo Epstein's former front office. This is what I mean by general. Who is working with Theo? What is his resource network? Because during that time with Theo, the resource network was a precedence from Boston through coaches, even former players, scouts, front office executives. And the most important features of that era were all to some degree unexpected. Anthony Rizzo's rapid development, in part due to working with Eric Hinsky. The Eric Hinsky hire is one of the most important coaching hires in Cubs history. You look at Javi Baez. Chili Davis had a lot of bad for the team, but in part, Javi Baez's mechanical changes were from Chili Davis and Joe Madden. Madden bringing over Chili Davis. Again, Chili Davis did not work out. I'm not, commending him for everything, but it's that resource network. What talent does Jed bring over? And it's not like, oh, he doesn't have talent or whatever. It's more like, what is the best chance that you can get the best people working to bring out the best of every single player? And so when I look at Jed and the gap from 2017 to 2021, part of me wonders if it's too large, because that's 4 to 5 years where those really talented folks are working for different front offices. At that point, you start backtracking and trying to get from those front offices, but there's unfamiliarity by doing so. You hire Carter Hawkins, but you've never worked with Carter Hawkins. There's a learning curve in that relationship. Similarly, Carter Hawkins doesn't have the authority to bring over other guys from his resource network. Of course, it's going to be maybe slower than your competition, being Milwaukee, who's outproduced you in every aspect because they've been working together for years. That was always a concern for me with Jed Hoyer. This has nothing to do with numbers. It has nothing to do with spending. It's simply talent pool acquisition across the entire organization. And when we look at 83 wins, they're a mediocre organization, and it's reflected in that. And in some parts, actually kind of impressive. They were able to even beat 83 with building from bottom up a new scouting infrastructure from a resource network they never worked with before. Dan Kantrovitz, Carter Hawkins, all outside the organization. So to me, that signals the infrastructure was not in place. It's been obviously too slow. The room for optimism is that they have now been working together for 3-4 years. And then at that point, maybe that curve towards improvement is linear and now it just exponentiates, right? And that's where the hope is. I do think there's reason to believe that is a possibility.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points. And honestly, I love to hear this perspective, because I don't really, let's just put it simply, you're smarter than me, Brendan. Okay.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I just said it for you.
All
okay.
Right.
And all the people listening probably agree. Okay. So you are correct in the idea of, just bringing people over for the front office who are familiar with each other. And yeah, like, I don't know where those familiarities are, like, even on the coaching staff, like, we'll see now, because it looks like Craig Counsell is going to bring his own guys over.
And that's one example, right? Like, that is a huge, I think it's underweighed how important that is. Again, just to emphasize, when the past era was founded on those types of coaches, unlocking something. And just before, I throw it back to you, the Anthony Rizzo adjustment, what I'm talking about is if you look at Rizzo, I think 2013 to 2014, maybe it was 2014, 2015, his position in their batter's box was further towards first base. So he had problems with his outside pitches, and he got eaten alive by lefties. So, of course, what did they do? Shift him over, crowd the plate, and this comes after him lowering his hand significantly. That was in part from Rizzo's explanation from Eric Hinsky, right? When they're hiring Hinsky, they're not thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to hire him because he's going to fix Rizzo. It's just a matter of this guy is creative enough, maybe take some risk, and you develop guys in ways that you did not project. And that's where the Cubs have lacked over the past 3 years.
Yeah. I guess if you just look at coaches, like, it looks like Hottovy and what's his name, the hitting coach,
Moskow's.
Well, Moskow's too.
Oh, Dustin Kelly.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I think those guys have shined. Like, you can see the differences they have made. Hottovy has really helped guys that we didn't expect to be huge contributors on this team become huge contributors on the team. And I think Dustin Kelly has played a big part in someone like Pete Crow-Armstrong, for example. I wish I knew how, you thoroughly explained how Eric Hinsky helped Anthony Rizzo back in the day, right? I don't think they've shared any of this information regarding Pete Crow-Armstrong. And I remember you sent a tweet during the season, probably when he was red hot in August, about where his hands were or whatever in the batter's box. And to be completely blunt with you, my friend, it didn't look like it was anything that different. And I'm just like,
he made some major changes. Man. He made 3 big changes throughout the year. Let me do the ad break here because I know we're going to go off on a tangent. This is the danger of having you and I do these podcasts because we're not the lead guys,
Yeah.
And so we're going to be in the 40-minute mark doing no ads over here. Do a quick ad break. We'll come back around. Maybe we'll talk about some of the coaching stuff. I do think it's an interesting topic. All right. So first ad break here. HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasoned recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Make this fall the tastiest season yet with farm fresh produce and easy autumn-inspired recipes delivered right to your door with HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers all the pre-portioned ingredients you'll need to make easy homemade meals. All the proteins, veggies, sauces, spices, and more arrive in your box, along with simple instructions that walk you through each step in the cooking process. If you get tired after a long day, I can't relate. HelloFresh is a great time saver and even greater, a better dinner option than anything I would have made. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free Cubs. Applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free Cubs. I mean, that's a lot of meals right there, Cody.
They sent me a box, and I can't wait to dig in tomorrow.
Yeah, they look good, man. I may need to share this with all my friends. We have another ad right here from CHSN. We're sponsored by Chicago Sports Network, the new home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core. And they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch Bulls, Hawks, and Sox all season long. My calf is cramping up. I think I need some HelloFresh boxes over here. I'm dehydrated, I'm not getting my nutrients. Wow, my calf is killing me. Put me on the IL.
What are you doing out there in San Diego?
I'm just, I'm sitting on this high top over here. That's the problem. I'm showing my age. But back to the point about the coaches and the staff and the front office. That's where I mean the zoomed out approach, because I find myself, I don't know how you feel about this, but always thinking about, okay, what about this move and that move? And how do you make these 8 AAA bats work? What about all of this stuff in 2022 with the Matt Mervis, Lack call up, all of this stuff, right? Yeah. And then I'm always reminded, when 2014, 2015, 2016 happened, their biggest contributors were never expected guys. Kyle Hendricks becoming a Cy Young candidate, Javi Baez emerging from a 2014 historically bad whiff rate in that second half of 2014. Anthony Rizzo's development. Really, the only surefire producer was Chris Bryant during that era. And so then I started thinking, can this front office make it so that the environment brings out the best of everyone? And so far in 4 years, we can honestly say here now it has not, right? And that's where I think if we take more of a general bird's eye view, that's the criticism. I don't think it's the lack of money. It doesn't make things better, but the lack of spending is also just as important as just the lack of a good environment.
Yeah. I was listening to Northside Territory, which is the podcast that Patrick Mooney and Sahadev Sharma do, yesterday. And somehow the topic of spending, they did like a mailbag episode. Someone asked them about something related to spending or whatever, ownership. And I don't remember which one of them said it, but, you know, they said something about how the Cubs are, you know, they're top 10 in payroll, but they should still always be in the top 5.
Oh, absolutely.
And for like coming from those guys, like those are actual reporters. They're not just dumb fans like me and you. Like if they're saying that, then I think there's some criticism deserved for, you know, the fact that not only do I feel like they're not really managing money well, because you still had a bunch of dead money on the books this year on like short-term signings that failed miserably, but also like it just like they just haven't used those resources that they talk about all the time in terms of, you know, bringing in that big bat or whoever to, you know, kind of help this team get over that hump, you know? And so like, while I agree with you about a lot of that, it's also like, I don't know, Juan Soto would be awesome, you know?
Listen, I've been saying that for the past year and a half. I would have traded Morel for Soto in a heartbeat last offseason.
Same. I would have too. And it's, I understand fan frustration when it comes to ownership and spending, but as much as like I just referenced with those guys saying that they should still be top 5, you know, being top 10 in payroll, like, you know, the Guardians they're in the ALCS right now. And I guess they're paying Jose Ramirez and that's it, man. Like I'm never going to be the fan that points to spending and how or any of that, because we could certainly just flip it around and be like, well, why'd we give Dansby Swanson all that money? I'm not doing that, but a lot of fans are doing that right now. And I said that just to trigger you a little bit.
I appreciate that. My eyes went big.
Why'd we give him all that? It's like, well, you complained about
is over, folks.
You complained about them not giving him any money or spending money, and it's just like it can go reverse on both sides. To me, it's always going to be about how you have to have a really good, solid core that you built up from within. You have to have some young nucleus of players like Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez, Addison Russell, Kyle Schwarber. All those guys were homegrown guys. I don't care that they traded for Rizzo, whatever. You have to have guys like that, and then you do have to go spend money. You got to go sign the John Lester. You got to sign a Jason Hayward, even though it didn't work out. But like, I don't think they win without him. And also, like, they tried. They in that offseason before the 2016 season, in which they won the World Series,
which they did. Yeah, I almost did.
Almost did, right? Like they went out there and they did what, you know, what the kind of market team that they are. Like they went out and tried to put the team over the top, and it worked, you know. So I just think I'm just kind of venting a little bit at the same time, but just kind of saying that I think it's always going to be about how you need a little bit of both. And from this front office, it just feels like, and me and Luke and Ryan, or at least me and Luke are saying this a lot of late, it's just like, it feels like they just hope things work out. And they're like, who are the nerds at 1060 West Addison in that building at Gallagher Way? Like, who are the nerds up there doing projections? Because like, that's what it feels like, man. Like, it just feels like they are hoping that certain things work out. And if it does, great. We get in the playoffs and we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, the I'm not going to get into the whole analysis and projection thing. I've done this like 1,000 times. Can't project baseball, right? So ironically, the front officer Jed, by relying on where he was at 83, 85 wins, was not a wise decision if that was truly what he was doing. I don't know. I will say, with the money situation, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, 3 of the top payrolls, maybe 2 of those 3 teams go to the World Series. It's pretty remarkable how we talk about the Cubs being the 3rd largest market, never, ever even close to that context. And so when I talk also about the organization, make no doubt about this, I'm talking about the business ops too, and Crane Kenny. For as much flack as I've given the front office or Jed Hoyer, well, why did the Wrigley renovation take so much longer? Why was the budget overshot despite having basically a praise fest with their Tom Ricketts documentary about the renovation, which it did turn out. Wrigley's beautiful, the surrounding area, a lot of businesses come in. That's been great, but it's too slow and they overshot their budget. What about the Marquee Sports Network? Why do half the fans come to me asking questions about Marquee? I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. So the business side has not, from the past few years, been run smoothly, or we would not have been seeing this. So then we ask a question, well, how come the Cubs are comfortable at just the first tier of the luxury tax? Why isn't there that extra incentive to go above, like the Mets, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees? And if there's some calculation in place where spending between 240 to 280 is likely to not give you a significant boost in revenue relative to risk, then the business side is not functioning properly. This team should want to spend $300 million every year because the risk in doing so is significantly outweighed by the reward of being one of these teams. So this is not just a baseball ops thing. This is not just a business ops thing. This is an organizational-wide thing. This is an ownership thing. So I can get on Tom Ricketts for not spending, but what I'm trying to express is I'm on Tom Ricketts because the organization is not running smoothly. We're not winning games. Only 4 teams with the Cubs have not played in an NLDS since 2017. That means the Cubs, 26 other teams have been in an NLDS since 2017. It's flat out unacceptable. Yeah. In that regard, 26 out of 30, if you want to be kind of emotional or hyperbolic about this, the Cubs have been one of the worst run organizations in professional baseball, purely based off playoff appearances in the last 8 years. If you want to be hyperbolic, I'm not saying they are, but these are just damning numbers. It's damning to see all the business ops being delayed and the lack of just competition for how much resources you have.
Yeah. You sound like me there for a second.
You're working me up. Gosh.
Every time I come on with you, I work you up.
Every single time. I mean, listen, like, you're a fan, I'm a fan. Yeah. We're 2 idiots talking about this. I don't even know if this is actually right, the way that we're talking about the revenue and all this stuff. But what's undeniable, and this is where I always get back to my final points, it's undeniable. They just haven't been good enough, right? Yeah. So whatever the reason, it's not like your job to be right about this. Like, it's not my job to be right about this. I can share my experiences of why I think they've been wrong, right? Like, I understand numbers and projections. I do this, most of my time. I totally get what they're thinking and why it did not work. Yeah. But it's just not good enough. And in a sport that requires to adapt and stay ahead of the curve, it's frustrating, especially when we spend so much of our time watching this team.
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned Crane Kenny, and honestly, we don't talk enough about him in terms of criticism or slander, however you want to put it. But like the business side has been a massive, like I feel in some ways it's just kind of nagging because it seemed like because of how long the renovations took and like the going over the budget and all that, it did affect baseball operations, and it shouldn't have, no matter what. It never should have really, but it did. They let it. And now we're at a point where everything is done. They don't have any construction outside Wrigley Field right now, my man. They got plenty of degenerates like me down at the DraftKings Sportsbook. They got all those new restaurants that are down there that are nice and I like to go to from time to time with my friends. I like hanging out down there on a Saturday afternoon watching college football here in the fall. I would love to be able to hang out down there when the Cubs are in the postseason in October, my man. Like they did a great job of putting everything together down there, but you're right. It took too long. And the fact that they honestly kind of used it as a reason to not really, I don't know. They used it to affect baseball operations in a negative way. It's really is unacceptable. But you know what? To go off it, if the baseball team was winning games through all of that, we wouldn't bat an eye, man. But the thing is they haven't been winning baseball games.
And that's not like a random occurrence, right? It's representative of the larger organization at play. Let me do the second ad break here again before we get too far off. We'll come back, finish this discussion. You're working me up. I don't know why you always do this to me.
Imagine if you lived here.
Oh my God. Z-Biotics. Let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I think pre-alcohol is wonderful. As I'm getting older, I'm getting these cramps in my calves over here as I keep talking about. I realized that pre-alcohol is a great way to ensure I'm on top of my game. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondered, what is it actually like? Now that I've tried it, I believe the hype, and with their GMO technology, they will release different products to help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/CHGO Cubs to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code CHGO Cubs at checkout. Z-Biotics is back with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames, a crystal clear optics, and they make the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. I wear Shady Rays in the very warm, hot California November weather to keep my eyes protected. If you don't love your shades, exchange it for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team has your back with personal and fast support exclusively for our listeners. Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Okay. Where was I, Cody? Where was I?
Oh, we were talking about just the great Cubs organization and how everything is just going smoothly and we're turning the corner in 2025 and PCA is going to be a 6-WAR player and
he might be.
He might actually be.
That's not being dramatic.
We were just really negative for 30 minutes. You want me to get positive?
That's not being negative. I mean,
we've been pretty negative, man.
Sometimes I do, but
I'm not saying you we have been pretty negative.
the problem is when you put you and me like in the same room, it just spirals out. You know, you go in your dark thoughts. But like back to the overall point, like we're fans with this, right? Like we're allowed to be stupid about this and dumb about this. And I get asked,
do you think that we're being stupid or dumb about this though?
Like, I think
for how much we follow the team and have been following it for years.
Yeah, listen, I follow this team in an unhealthy way. Okay. the pushback that I think we get, which I understand, is some fans, they listen to us and not just like you and me specifically, but just like, podcasters, even whoever's doing Cub stuff, right? And the question comes to mind is like, well, what do you know better? Tell me what your solution is. You think you're so smart. And I never want to like express that I think I'm smart or I have the solutions. I don't. How can I? I don't do this every day. This is not my job to be running the baseball organization.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these are the results. It's a result oriented business. And I do talk to coaches. I do talk to analysts. I actually have quite a bit of analyst friends, believe it or not. And that informs my opinion about how franchises are ran. And when I talk to coaches specifically, it opens my eyes just how important they are and how undervalued they are. And that's why I always question, all right, well, do they have everyone in place to bring out the most? But that's where I get a little unsettled. And I think it's fair from a fan's perspective to question it. And I think it's also fair when folks come in the chat to scream at you, either scream with you or at you. They're entitled, and to some degree, I get where they're coming from. I get the really negative fans like, Culata, the Godfather. I totally understand where he's coming from. There's some truth to everyone's perspective and how they view this team.
I don't say this to be negative too much about
positive.
I don't say this to be too negative about Culata, the Godfather, who's followed and listened to the show the last 3 years. But like in many ways, he's been right about a lot of things that
wow, look at that. Clip this.
That I have came back at him about, and largely just about where like the team winning. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he has seen it all because he's been a fan for a lot longer than me. And so he has seen every single type of Cubs team you could probably see. But I say that because I feel like I am now experiencing that from the younger generation below me and you, because I think the only fans left who have any faith in Jed Hoyer, his front office, and all of that are like somewhere between 20 and 25 years old.
Why do you say that? I haven't noticed that.
Because I say that because
they grew up in like the 2012 to 2016 transition.
They grew up during the best years of the Cubs like existence.
So they think, oh, this is like just going to happen again.
Yes.
I see that.
I feel, and this is totally off like interactions on social media and mainly interactions on social media. And the only way I could be wrong about this is like you just truly never know on social media how old someone is, but you read some replies and you kind of try to you kind of start to understand, okay, this person's like somewhere between 17 and 25 years old. Like they just don't know. Like I'm not trying to say that they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not trying to say that they don't have like them being optimistic, I guess, is bad. Admittedly, I wish I could be a lot more optimistic right now than I have been over the last handful of months.
I don't think you're optimistic or pessimistic. I think like you and I view the current state pretty closely aligned. I think like we're in the middle ground. We can see it go in either direction, and it's
sure. Yeah. But I feel like the only people who are pretty much okay with where things are right now and think things are going to get better are younger fans. And I could be completely wrong, but that's the kind of the feeling I get. I talk to any older fan. I talk to my guys like Danny Rocket and older fans like that I've gotten to know on Cubs Twitter or just in the bleachers over the last handful of years. Like, I would say they definitely lean more on the pessimistic side, but and they also can align with where me and you are right now too. But I haven't seen a lot of people who think that things are fine and are gonna be fine in the future. And the only people that I see that are people who like, they see like, we have 8 top 100 prospects and like, we won the World Series with just a bunch of prospects. Like, We'll do it again. You know,
maybe
what I mean?
It will.
and maybe they will. And if so, like, we'll give Jed Hoyer all the flowers, man. I promise you. We will. But like, it's just like that's the vibe I get from people online these days. It's like it just kind of feels like a generation shift or whatever. And I mean, in some ways, like, I'm kind of jealous. I wish I could just be blindly optimistic.
Dude, even 2016, like when I was growing up, my optimism was so cautious. I was always guarding against myself and having that massive disappointment.
Yeah.
I was scarred incredibly by like that 2008 run. Because I remember very vividly, they went 20 games above 500. And that was the first time in my life as a Cub fan, they were over 20 games above 500. I'm like, oh my God, my team's 20 games above 500. This is incredible. This is going to happen. You have Soto going up. I genuinely thought that year was going to be different. When they got swept by the Dodgers, heading into like the Theo era in 2016, even entering that year, putting myself back in that position, we had high expectations, but Pacoda's, it's actually kind of funny. Pacoda's projection was only 92 wins that year. They won 103 wins. So in some respect, they outperformed and got a little fortunate, and they kind of hit, like 2015 was an accelerator, but 2016 was still the second year for many of their guys coming off, somewhat fast call-ups in the previous season. So it wasn't like the Cubs front office was banking on 2016 being the ultimate year. They were banking more so on 2018, 2019 to max up all those pre-arb contracts with free agency. It just happened a year sooner. Because of that, because of the inability to project baseball, but getting just a ton of talent, that's where I'm optimistic. Because I don't think you can argue being pessimistic right now in a fully convincing way. At the same time, I don't think you can argue being fully optimistic, because the reality is this sport changes so fast and the players adapt so fast, more so now than ever, with pitching evolving like crazy and this really fast pendulum switch change with hitting and pitching. I just don't think you can confidently project things going forward. Now, that being said, I also don't think the Cubs front office has a precedence of adapting with the changing of the game right now. But this is where that 1 year will give us that final say. I do think there is a world in which we live where 2025 turns out better than you and I think right now. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I'm optimistic about it, but it is very real that opportunity exists where the Cubs become that stepping stone juggernaut as soon as next year. It's not that far-fetched.
Yeah. No, that's kind of like what I was saying earlier. It's like the way that I was talking, it makes it sound like, oh, this team just won 70 games. They won 83. They have good players. They're organizationally, from a prospect standpoint, they are healthy.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, how do you put the right players together and then start just, I'm not even asking for a World Series. I'll take that though, however, but like I'm asking to just play in October, man. Like, and like, that's not even what the front office should be striving for. Right. But like baby steps, like get us, like just get there already, man. Like, I don't know. So, but in general, I agree with you there. Like they certainly could find themselves playing October baseball in 2025, and that will be because of whatever they're going to do this offseason.
When the Cubs signed Theo, like, what was your first reaction? My first reaction just quickly was, oh, they got that, the stats guy from Boston, the young guru. And so this was like during when I started to like get into Fangraphs and the whole analytics stuff and everything. So my interest in the baseball stats and numbers correlated perfectly with Theo. For you, did you ever change how you viewed baseball as a result of Theo, or were you just like, you know what, this guy won a World Series before, he's going to do it here, and you didn't go into like the whole why of it at that time? That makes sense. Because this question will make sense about your younger perspective in a few minutes here. This is why I'm asking it now.
I have the Facebook posts saved still. I just when it happened, I just remember posting that we're gonna build a statue for this guy one day. That's
probably
what I
will.
Yeah,
probably
they should. They should.
Yeah.
Yes. I wouldn't say that it. I mean, it just. And this is like my natural fandom for not just the Cubs, but all sports teams that I like. Like the Cubs did something that I thought was smart and could actually give me some hope again. And so I was just optimistic. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just happy that it happened because I knew what he did. He broke that curse in Boston, and he was obviously looked highly of. And I was excited to see what was to come. And I will say though, like I followed the team pretty closely in the 2000s, like as a kid, especially like definitely more so like 07, 08. Like
I mean, my first year was 2002. Like that was like, I got obsessed in 2002. And then 2003, of course, coincidentally just made me sick. So
I always tell people I became a fan of baseball because I watched Sammy Sosa hit tanks onto Waveland.
I mean, for sure.
And then, but like, I don't even know if I really became a fan of the Cubs. It was more of like, I was a fan of Sammy Sosa, but my family were Cubs fans. So I just liked the Cubs. So to be honest, I would watch Cubs games from 98 till like 2002. I'd come home from school and then just turn it on and hope that I'd get to see Sammy take in a bat or two and see if he's going to hit one out.
To bring a full circle for a split second, the fact that Sammy Sosa is not part of the organization reflects on the organization. Now, the pushback that I get is, well, the former players don't like Sammy. I don't care. You bring those former players in and you make this work. If you can't get these attitudes and the emotions settled to bring in the direct reason why you and I are sitting here right now talking about this, then your organization is not being run smoothly. How can you not mend broken relationships to make this work for your fans, to bring in millions of dollars? And to be frank and quite honest with you, Sammy back in the organization would bring this franchise a lot of money. And they can't even figure that out. They can't mend these broken relationships with their former players who may not like Sammy.
Right. I know. Don't get me started. Now you're going to rile me up because this is something I'm very passionate about. But what I was getting at, though, is like that's how I became, I guess, a quote-unquote Cubs fan, was just because I like Sammy Sosa. Then 03 happened, and they were fun, and they were good. And I think I really started following the game a lot more. And just as I got older, I remember 05 and 06 just being absolutely miserable to be a Cubs fan because the Cardinals won the World Series in 06. And I don't know. It was where I grew up, there weren't a lot of White Sox fans. I actually rooted for the White Sox in 05 just because it was like a Chicago team. But like, I don't know. I was just like, man, why can't the Cubs be good? I don't know. I was so young that I didn't really know how to view it. But when 07 and 08 happened, like following those teams like that, I followed those teams a ton. And then from 09 until they hired Theo Epstein, I was also in college for a large part of that. I wasn't really paying attention. They were hard to want to give a crap about at that time. So once they hired Theo, I kind of, I started following the farm system for the first time in my life. I mean, when I was a kid and I was watching Corey Patterson and all those other guys people touted up and all this, like I was just excited to watch the team, right? I didn't care anything about the farm system, but I started following the farm system in like 2012. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I like Theo made me a better fan. That's what he did. He made me more obsessed with the Cubs. That's what he did. To be honest with you, I didn't go on to Fangraphs probably until after college.
Well, there you go. Well, maybe you didn't go on to Fangraphs till like 2.5 years ago when you took this job. It's like, oh, I got to see what this war is everyone's talking about.
Yeah, what is this war? There's this guy in the chat. his name's James. He always says that we like put too much value into WAR or whatever because we reference it a lot. And I always laugh when I see it because it's like I don't really like I pay attention to it and I do acknowledge it, but like there's obviously some flaws to it in some ways. But
Of course. And that's where it's okay. This is why I wanted to ask you all this, right? Because
okay.
now we led into the whole like analytics stuff, right? That's how I got like that's why Theo made me, I think, a better fan because it opened up that entry point. The analytics, again, in a weird way, I share fans' annoyance at it. Let's put it that way. WAR is a perfect example. There's a degree of error in capturing defensive value. There's a degree of error in capturing base running value. So when we talk about 1 WAR difference or half a WAR difference, it's within the margin of error of the actual capture value. So if I'm going to argue, not saying people are doing this, but like Pete Alonso and Bush, right? Well, which is kind of funny to say Bush had a higher WAR. I think he did as Pete Alonso, but we're talking about within the degree of error in capturing the value, right? So if someone says to me, "Oh, do you want Pete Alonso or Bush?" It's like, of course I want Pete Alonso. No, I want Michael Bush. But that's where I think some of the annoyance comes in. But the analytics folks who are not doing the analytics, who are just indulging it and eating it, it gets misinterpreted and then it gets propagated a little bit too much. And where I see some fans who are optimistic, which by all means be optimistic or supportive, they tend to follow that type of thinking where the amount of error in their mind doesn't compute with what they're seeing on Fangraphs. And that's why when I talk about projections and 84 wins as unacceptable, because I don't look at 84 as the number. I look at 70 as the number. So when I see 84, I go to 70. That's because that's one realistic bad case scenario from your team being a 70-win team. So you look at the Braves, for example. Braves were a projected 101 team or 98-win team, whatever it was. I think it was a 101-win team by Pacoda. So when I see 101, or if I see 100, I think 87, 88. So that means, okay, in their worst case scenario, they're going to make the playoffs. So that's how I interpret like the whole air. So when I say, okay, I need the Cubs to be a juggernaut, I'm saying I need them to be a 98-win team. And if they're not a 98-win team, then I can't be fully transparent with you in my confidence because I know they're just a few injuries away from me being disappointed. And I want the Cubs to be as good as possible to offset some of the unfortunate they're going to see during the season. And when we saw the Cubs this year in May and June, they got unlucky. Their bullpen injuries were unlucky. ALLCITY, Merriweather, that was unlucky. Neris took a step back and they couldn't even rebound some of the natural weirdness that happened. But when you're set up to be within that will of randomness, then it's almost the front office's doing. They are the ones who accepted that possibility, or they didn't make the decisions to get beyond that in a productive manner. And whatever the reason is, it just wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about May and June, like, and I know me and you kind of align on this, so that's why I bring it up. Like, May and June, you could literally script almost every game they played. If the offense actually showed up that night, the bullpen was blowing it. Or the bullpen and starting pitching was awesome that night, but they score 1 run, and it's probably because they somehow luckily got a guy to third base and there was a wild pitch. They didn't even drive him in, that you could literally script every game in May and June. As someone who had to watch this team every single night, 4 out of, or let's call it 7 days a week because I was running our social media accounts too. 7 days a week, basically. 7 days a week. All right. I scripted so many games sarcastically and then ended up being right about a lot of them in my own head. I never tweeted this out or anything. It's just like watching it with my eyes, right? I don't know how you avoid that. And what you're saying, though, is like you have to assemble enough talent to where your projection at the beginning of the season is higher than 83, 84, 85 wins and be more like 90, at least 90 to 95, right? Like
That's still too little. You have to be, if you want to gamble a significant amount of money, you degenerate over there, then you can't gamble that much on a 92 win team on paper. It's just too much up. So the reason, to be explicit here, the reason is because 10 of 30 teams are going to miss their mark, their projections, by 14 wins. So that means 20 teams fall in this window of 14 wins as an error in their projection. So if, in my mind, if most teams are within this 14 win error, then I need to get beyond those teams. And so the way to get beyond those teams is to make sure that my 14 win floor is still a playoff contender. And that's exactly, I'm so glad the Braves made the playoffs this year, because it proves the point perfectly. Perfectly. They hit a nightmare scenario, but they still made the playoffs. That is the standard. The standard is to have enough reserve where that happens and you're still playing baseball in October, even if it is only for a week. At least you have the chance at the tournament.
Right. It's not like anyone was really disappointed them either, because like Acuna was hurt, Riley was hurt.
Exactly.
Right.
And like let me do the ad break here and I'll finish this off, because you know, with us over here, we're gonna get to 3 hours. I'm not gonna do the ad break here. What are we doing? Oh, game time. Of course, game time. You know, I wish I could use game time to go to Cubs playoff games right now, but you know, I can't. I will say though,
you live in California, you can go to Dodgers playoff games.
I'm not going to go to LA. I will say though, I gave my game time tips to my Padres friends, and I do have confirmation they use game time to get into those Padres playoff games. Game time picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have beautiful views of the seats before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee, even cancellation protection. They have job loss protection, whatever it is. Game time curation makes it easier to save more on sports. And if you don't want to go to baseball games, concerts, comedy, theater are all available on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. What was I saying before?
Well, I didn't even really get to finish my point.
Oh yeah, finish your point.
But my point was, when it comes to like May and June and all these projections and stuff, like, I don't know if you thought this going into the year, but like, I thought because they didn't do enough in the offseason that they would be more aggressive with prospect capital.
I had a discussion with Greg Huss about this, but continue your point.
Okay. So, and
we're at the hour mark, by the way. Do you want to go over a little bit? Because
we're gonna have to, yes.
All right, go.
So I don't know if things would have worked out. Like, I'm assuming whoever they would have promoted, if this scenario that I had formed in my head on opening day played out, I'm assuming that some things would have worked and some things wouldn't have, because prospects are prospects and you got to let them develop, right? However, with what I was saying about how I could script a lot of these games, the lack of aggressiveness from the Cubs to just be like, you're at a point where like you're in a season where you are expecting to make the playoffs, and you're basically dangling all these prospects to your fan base the last 2 years. The fact that you didn't even like, I don't know if Owen Casey would have came to the majors and just and did something. I don't. All I'm saying is the lack of any aggressiveness at all. The fact that we didn't see Owen Casey, we basically didn't see Matt Shaw. We somehow saw Kevin Alcantara because Seiya got hurt the last week of the year.
He was on the 40 man, so it's 40
and he was on the 40 man, right? Yeah. Like in everything. That's what every fan always tells me too. It's like, oh well, he's not on the 40 man. I'm like, this team isn't good enough to where they should be blocked. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just saying that the lack of aggressiveness when your team was complete and utter trash for 2 straight months, the lack of aggressiveness or just to try something different. To me, it's like it goes back to what we have said about how organizationally they are too slow, you know? And if you knew that you were going to be slow with these prospects, then why didn't you do more in the offseason? That's why Jed Hoyer gets an F from me, because it just feels like he just didn't. It almost feels like he just didn't care. I know he cared, but like that's what it feels like. It's like he, in the back of his head, knew that this was another developmental year. Like, and it shouldn't have been. It was not the expectation. I don't know what they're thinking on development and how that works. I'm not there. I don't know. I'm just being a dumb fan, but I think me and you share somewhat of the same type of feeling around that. And again, I don't know if it would have worked. Owen Casey could have came up from Iowa and absolutely sucked. And then, I'd probably be more down on him now than I am currently. And in reality, which I'm not down on him because I haven't seen him. I don't know what to expect. He's a left-handed power bat. They need power, right? Like you can even use guys who didn't even like, how do I say this? Guys who were in Double-A. Let's just use Shaw. Shaw was in Double-A for way too long, in my opinion. I know he struggled like the first month of the minor league season this year, but then he got it going, and he was there until literally like almost a month left of the year. Like I just feel like even in that aspect, moving from another level in the minor leagues, the Cubs have been kind of slow. I was shocked that they called up Alcantara. I know it's just because he's on the 40-man, but like I don't know the line. I don't know the balance. I follow prospects. I'm no Greg Huss. I'm no Greg Zumack. I'm not even you, Brendan. I don't know the answers. All I'm saying is it doesn't make any sense if you're not going to do it. You're going to do very little in this past offseason and then not be aggressive with your own prospect capital that you've been dangling to your fan base for the last 2 years.
Listen, I'm right there with you. I get pushback on this maybe more than you with the prospect aggressiveness. My thinking is aligned with you. I have maybe a different perspective on that alignment, if that makes sense. So if you allow me to explain, the way that prospects have succeeded and failed, to me, is really important. So Matt Mervis failed. He failed 1 year too late. That failure, in part, motivated the front office to sign Eric Hosmer and Trey Mancini because the lack of information with first base was too much because Matt Mervis didn't get an opportunity. At least that's how I perceive that. Crow-Armstrong's on the other end of the spectrum. This is really important for me. Crow-Armstrong gets called up, and we talk about contact rates, all these different numbers. I don't want to make this a number type thing, so don't focus on the numbers. Yeah. When he was called up, he had a 75% contact rate at the big league level. In AAA, he had a below 75% rates. Last season, before he was called up in September, it was around 70%. So to give you perspective what a 70% whiff rate is or contact rate, that's close to Patrick Wisdom, okay? Kyle Schwarber, the big sluggers, not to confuse the two last year. But if you whiff that much, you have to have the power output. Now, let me give you another perspective. High contact rate. Nico Hoerner is around 85%. Nico does not hit for power. Dansby Swanson's around 75%. He hits for 20, 25 home runs. So PCA, getting called up, making under 74% contact in AAA meant for him to succeed, he needed to be a 30 home run hitting guy. Now, he was called up because Cody Bellinger broke his rib. So he was called up out of necessity, not because he deserved it. And Kirk Counsell explicitly said that. He's called up for defense, not because he deserved it. He gets called up. He makes more contact at the big league level than at AAA. No one expected that. No. That's a human behavioral adaptation that no computer nerd is going to confidently project. The front office folks can't project that either. So that started to get the wheels moving. PCA then did struggle. Okay. He got sent back down, came back up, struggled. That preceded another change, mechanical change. All of a sudden, He's making contact around Nico Horner's rate, and the power is going up. And now, we joked about it earlier, a 5-win season is really not that unrealistic next year because he was able to make those adjustments super fast. But what preceded the ultimate adjustment was a coincidental call-up due to Cody Bellinger's broken rib, not because they thought he deserved it. If Bellinger did not break his rib, we may not be talking about PCA in the same context. Similarly, Porter Hodge, walk per 9 of 7 batters per game in AAA. Gets called up, halves it. I texted my buddy who's a pitching coach. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Explain this to me. Did they change something? He's like, honestly, some guys, it just clicks for them when they get to the big leagues. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how valuable is a 40-man spot that gets cleared out 8 months from now? Is it more valuable than risking development that you don't expect? My answer is I'm going to go and risk it. That's my philosophy. I'm going to value the uncertainty, the possibility of guys adapting faster and unlocking their potential by exposing them to big league talent faster. And I am really convinced of this. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be swayed any other way because the brain is going to adapt in certain ways. And if you fail, if the Matt Mervis types fail, I'm inclined to believe they're never going to make it. That's just how it is. And one last point, coaches, for as much as we want to change spin rate and grips, release point, nerdy pitch lap stuff, the brain is going to adapt and you can't do anything about that. And the best way to adapt and grow is to play baseball, play in the high stress environments, and the brain will adapt. I promise you. It may adapt in bad ways. It may adapt in good ways, but it will adapt. So to me, it's lost opportunities when they're not putting those guys in those environments because you're wasting developmental time and you're wasting information gained because if they do fail, then you go sign someone else. And that's where I think it's been too slow and why I don't like the pace at which they have promoted guys to the big leagues. That's my take on it.
I mean, that's a lot better thought out and with actual, you actually talk to a coach. So it's better than just me yelling like a fan. So, I give you a lot of credit there. I just,
but think about you, right? So I'll speak for myself. When I went to the studios, right, the CHGO studios, the environment, the lights are on. My brain changes. It's different from doing this in my apartment right here. Naturally, you change, right? And so I think there's undervaluing. It's funny because we joke about the heartbeat and all that stuff. There's undervaluing emotional context. And that's also one reason why I kind of liked when David Ross used to go and yell at guys and why sometimes I don't like Kurt Counselor just sitting there, right? I personally value that emotional primer because I understand, at least for me, I understand that changes how your brain is going to connect. It just is. And so if we can leverage those opportunities, please do so.
Yeah. For me, it's just, I just felt like the Cubs were just getting in their own way with a lot of this type of stuff, and it's just you're already at certain points in May and June, it's you're already 8-9 games under 500. Try something different. Do something different, man.
Dude. And the whole argument, the reason those guys are not called off, the Matt Shaws, Owen Caseys, they're not on the 40-man. And so
that's just a lame excuse for me, man.
It's to me, it's a missed opportunity. I understand the thinking because then the pushback for me is going to be, well, because Matt Mervis was not on the 40-man, then Julian Merriweather was signed on that 40-man that same offseason. My response to that pushback is, why can't we do both? Right? What is going on where you can't do both? Because the Milwaukee Brewers do both. The Cleveland Guardians do both. Why can't the Cubs do both? So what is going on underneath the hood in the process that doesn't allow the Cubs to do both? And that's the point.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I want to clip the last 10 minutes of this and then literally shove it in Ryan's face because Ryan
say?
Well, Ryan will basically tell me the exact opposite because he knows so much more about roster maneuvering and the 40-man and all these things and the rules and all that. And admittedly, I admit that like I only know so much. I've definitely learned a lot more over the last 3 years since I have to cover this team full time now about how they can maneuver things. But man, I just feel like they always had the opportunity to just again be a little bit more riskier. They were in 15 and things led to like a World Series the next year, like it's just this team they had guys on the roster that were in their spots. Yes. Am I saying that you needed to call up Casey or Shaw or whoever to play every single day? No. Ryan's pushback to me is that if you're going to call those guys up, they need to play every single
No,
day.
I see. That's where I push back on that. So my thinking is, if these guys get 5 at-bats in 1 week at Wrigley Field and 40,000 fans, that's enough of an emotional stimulus to change how you think about things. And the best proof of that is PCA September of last year, in which he only got 20 plate appearances. Look what that preceded. Dramatic changes mechanically that accelerated that development. So you don't have to play every single day. In fact, I don't think that's even a good idea. Just give him a little bit of that, like that little bit of emotion, a little bit of emotional burst to change. So I push back on Ryan for that as well. And it goes to the point, not to criticize Ryan, but that's kind of like what I mean. There's devaluing just like human nature, human behavior. And so I get very frustrated because I understand a lot of like the number side of things, but lost in all this discussion are these like human beings. And like Rizzo, when he was with the Padres, awful before he was traded for the Cubs. I think he batted like 170 or something like that before he was traded for Andrew Kashner. And look at how he batted in San Diego. Looked like Kurt Counsell, hands super high like this and everything, but he had to suck. He had to be stressed, worried to make those dramatic changes. So now we look at Shaw, Casey, etc. Damn, we're gonna have to do that in 2025 when we're supposed to be good. We're gonna have to go through a bad stretch likely with Shaw, Casey, and so on. Damn, I wish we did that in 2024, right? And that's where I get a little upset.
Especially like, we all knew it would have been a miracle run, in the last month and a half, like I think more fans would have been more interested to see those guys get an opportunity than watch them play as well as they did in August and September. I genuinely, I feel like that's what fans would have rather seen.
And it's not even like, okay, call them up in like August. It's like, can we strategize something where you call them up in cups of coffee where they're predetermined stints? Theo Epstein called up Schwarber in 2015 just for the Cleveland series before the All-Star break, and he made that known. He's coming up for the Cleveland series. We're sending him back down, right? And that was made known. Can we do something similar? Can we just push the boundaries a little bit? It's so stagnant. We're playing in these fine margins, and we think these margins even exist. They're make-believe margins. There's no confident margins, and that's where it's just that's my displeasure with the front office, because they have done a lot of good, but they're so, sometimes it feels like they're so stuck in their sense of reality that simply does not exist.
They're very stubborn. That's what it feels like.
It's like they're not weighing reality appropriately in some regard. It sounds harsh, and this is where the pushback for us is like, oh, you guys are complete idiots talking about this. But again, it just, the results speak for themselves. It's been bad. It hasn't been as good as it could have been.
And in some ways, because the results have been bad, now it has fans turning on some of the more productive players that are on the Cubs. Individual performances that are good, them not translating with wins for the Cubs. Like, it's
like who?
Like Nico Horner, for example, Brendan. Okay. Like Nico Horner was he as good as he was in 23? No. I don't think offensively he was as good as he was in 23, but the defense was still there. And I know you're very upset about him not being a Gold Glove finalist.
I mean, it's a horseshit award. Doesn't mean anything.
You're right.
Only counts for the shortstops.
Right. But like a lot of fans are talking about, should they trade Horner and then just give Shaw the job? And it's like, no, they shouldn't do that. I know I kind of questioned it at the trade deadline because I like he was in trade rumors and whatever.
It's fine, Cody. It's okay. Whatever. I forgive you for your faults at times.
the only reason I did it was because like I'm like trying to figure out how is this team going to maneuver the roster. That's literally it. I like Nico Horner. I understand the value he brings to the Chicago Cubs, which is an elite defensive second baseman, a guy who has like 90 percentile contact, and
Look at you.
like he can hit the ball to all fields, and he's got great hair, whatever. Okay. He's a very productive player. And if you put that guy on the Dodgers, who he was kind of rumored to maybe have been traded there, they went and got Tommy Edman instead. If they would have put Nico Horner on the Dodgers to go with that already stacked lineup that they have, we as Cubs fans would have sat here and been like, I can't believe we traded that guy.
Absolutely.
Right.
And with Nico too, it's a good example about these, like, not to dial in on the focus output of the number, right? The way Nico performed this year is going to result in a 3-win season and a 5-win season. The amount of contact he made, the amount of hard contact, his overall performance that he controlled equals last season's output and this season's output. And this season, it fell a little bit on the negative side, but not by a few points, or not by more than a few points. So like that's his range, right? And so to your point, like how do you make things work? I understand people want to elevate that range. They want to get like guys who push the team past what they're currently, and they see Nico as someone who's just a limited range, right? I understand that. But for replacing him with, let's say, Matt Shaw, we talk about contact rate, okay? 74% contact rate in AAA. That means if he were to sustain that at the big league level, which he's not, because in AAA, they're not facing 100-mile-per-hour heat. You can just subtract a few points. If he's a 70% contact rate next year, he needs to hit at least 30 home runs. That's not likely going to happen. You can't confidently project that. So if you trade Nico, you're likely going to subtract 4 wins from your total just by accepting that risk. That means if you trade Nico, you need to get at least 4 wins back at a cheaper rate. And the way they do that is what every team wants to do. Mm-hmm. And it's unlikely they're able to do that. If they do, I will give them credit. If you can go out and get 4 wins at the same rate, have flexibility, I don't give a damn who it is. I'm for it.
That's like signing Juan Soto, then trading Nico, and then that allows you to risk. That allows you to make that kind of risk and give Shaw the job, right?
Well, like we looked at like Starlin Castro and Ben Zobrist. That's kind of a good representation. So you look at Starlin Castro, 7-year, $60 million extension, trade him for Adam Moore into the Yankees, bring over Ben Zobrist for like a 4-year, $52 million contract, almost the same amount of money that you pay Zobrist that you paid Castro. That allowed Addison Russell to slot in at shortstop. Boom, one of the best defenders. There's your 4-win surplus at pre-arb price, right? Mm-hmm. And the risk with Zobrist was less than the risk with Castro. That made sense. You need, in this regard, to get a lower risk than Nico Horner. And that's where it's unlikely. That's the real challenge in trying to make that work.
Yeah. That's a much better example. I think what I'm saying is like, if you're going to trade Nico to give a prospect an opportunity immediately to start every day,
it's dumb.
Then you have to bring in someone else that's going to, I guess, fill in those wins that Nico was bringing you. And I said Juan Soto because it's like, okay, then
you don't think they're going to sign Juan Soto?
I do not think they're going to. I'm just throwing that name out there because I'm trying to manifest.
I mean, there's gonna come a point in the offseason where you start believing a little bit, though.
Not really, no.
Okay, good for you. Good for you.
I did that with Ohtani. I'm not doing it with
Juan Soto.
I'm just saying, like, if you're going to trade Nico to give a prospect a full opportunity on opening day, like Matt Shaw in this instance, then you have to replenish. You have to bring in someone who has proven major league success at the same time.
Absolutely.
that you can project, like, this guy will give us this. That way you can effectively give Matt Shaw that opportunity to go through the development of being a major league player, right? And so for me, as time has gone on and the thought of just that, of trading Nico to give Shaw the job, I have now put myself in a position where I think the best decision is to just kind of let Shaw be a utility player who can play some short, some second base, and some third base, and kind of just be a guy that, gets Dansby off his feet for a little bit more. That way he's not playing on a bad knee for 2 weeks and sucks for 3 months offensively,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to maybe somewhat be like the infield position that Mike Tauchman is for the outfield, like a guy that
The
can
summer of Shaw.
sure, that's to me, that's what Shaw's best contribution for the team in 25 can be.
Or it might
And
be
if
through a trade.
sure, yeah. I'm open to trades for sure, because if you can move some of that capital to bring in a real impact player that has proven something, I'm here for it.
So
But
am I.
I'm just saying, that's what I think Shaw's best, in general, like what he could be for this team next year. So I don't know, but to go bring it all the way back around to the point of why he even got brought up. It's the fact that we could have seen him a little bit earlier this year, especially when the season basically was over for 2 months, man. And see him go through some of the, the being a new major league player, go through those adjustments, stuff like that. It's not just because I want to see something different. Now that was more about May and June.
Well, you kind of do though. And so
I did want to see something different,
Yeah.
but I just if there's anything that I hope that we see more in 25, it's that they're more acceptable to risk. Give some of these, they are all in AAA, man. I should not be waiting until September to see one of them,
Yeah.
and I don't think I will. I think we will see them in the first half of the season, at least one or two, especially if injuries happen like they continue to happen with this organization. But that's like we've been talking about, it's the lack of aggressiveness or whatever you want to call it with that.
I mean, you don't even have to say, because people get caught up on the semantics. Lack of aggression. What are you talking about? Whatever you want to ascribe what we're saying to, however you want to describe all that, be my guest. Call something else.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to put words to. It's just that the prospects are developing too slow.
Yeah.
That's it. Let me rephrase that. We're not getting value from the farm system in a timely manner, whether it be through trades or through their actual contributions at the big league level. So this is the fifth year, and we have not seen the fruits of those efforts yet. That is too slow.
Yeah. Point and simple, or point blank simple.
Point blank simple.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it.
Are we done here? Do you have anything else to say?
Ken, you should just kick Corey out once a month and we can do this.
Do you feel a little better? This is like a therapy session.
I feel like this is therapy. I haven't done a Cubs therapy Twitter space in forever because it's just not fun to do them when they're bad like this. Yeah. It's good for it's good to get it all out, but they're just not fun right now, man. It's not fun to talk about this team. It's not fun to follow the team right now. I stand by this. I told Luke and Ryan during the season that at least the White Sox were going for history,
easy.
I know, man. It's crazy. I know it's crazy. At least they were going for history. I don't want to watch the Cubs go for that kind of thing. I'm just saying that I think a fair point is that the team was actually more interesting for me in 2022 than this year. And it's largely because we knew the expectations. We knew that they were trying to figure out some answers about some guys on the roster, all this and that. So expectations play a big part in that. But at the same time, this is what happens when you don't live up to expectations and you're probably, if not the most disappointing team in Major League Baseball, you're one of probably the top 3 most disappointing teams in baseball this year. And so,
yeah, I mean, I was just shocked how they entered the season, truly shocked. We saw the free agent market over the past 2 years, even dating back to 2023, and you see the big names on the board coming off. It's Cubs aren't going after those guys. And then you roll around to 2024, you're all right, well, they had a great 2023. They clearly are going to, spend some capital here, and they have all this prospect capital. They can make it work. They're going to put a good team on the field in 2024. And then it started to tick around. I was like, all right, we're not even signing Bellinger. We're going to wait his market out.
Yeah, dude.
And like, it was just a weird offseason of neutrality and not even like, other than the Bush trade, just like no creativity. And even the Bush trade was a good outcome, but still like not enough in retrospect either. It's just a weird way they proceeded into 2024 that is truly shocking and most disconcerting about the way the front office proceeds even this offseason. I have no idea what to expect. I had expectations last offseason. This offseason, I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah. I think we had Michael Cerami on Monday's show, and he put it simply like 2024 was just a complete waste.
It felt
we didn't learn anything new, and we watched 162 games of, some of it was fun, a lot of it wasn't, and I maybe developed some likely I can't say the word. I've developed some likeliness for
likeliness.
Yeah.
I
liked new players. Like I like Shota Imanaga, right? I became a fan of new players. I became a fan of some new players on the cusp. God, I cannot talk. They let me do a podcast. All my haters are really just like,
I can't say like
so
half the
right
words that come into my brain, man. I'm just being honest.
We're
with you.
now at an hour and a half.
I can do this.
Oh, we did this. Well, it's 10:31 Central Time, so 8 or 7:30 there.
8:30 my time.
8:30, yeah. So it's kind of a late Thursday night, and we just had a nice little hour and a half therapy session.
We got 5 more months of this. Can you believe that? 5 more months. Yeah. I mean, what the hell do I do for 5 months? Just think about the 2024 Cubs.
All I know is that I go on 2 weeks of vacation the first 2 weeks of November, and I'm just counting down, dude.
Where are you going?
It's a staycation. I just don't want to work. I don't want to talk about the Cubs for 2 weeks. That's what I want to do.
Good for you. But you probably still will. That's the sad part about it. So you probably still log on.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. And then also like it'd be my luck that like some major news breaks whenever I'm
you have 2 weeks off starting in November?
Yeah, November 4th till the 18th.
Isn't like the GM meetings going on around that time?
Yeah. Figure it out, Luke and Ryan. I'm out of here. I didn't take any vacation at all.
That means I get a phone call that means I get a text from Jake. Hey, can you hop on over here? That's what that means. I might have to be covering.
They accepted it. I'm gonna do it.
All right. Let's wrap up here. Any last words before we sign off?
No, this was fun. And Corey, this would have been even better if you were here, but I'm glad that you weren't, so I could be here.
So you're thanking Corey for not existing, basically. Yeah. That's fine. That's fine.
But if you guys ever just like want a third to come on here and do this, like especially in the off season, you're more than welcome to ask.
So. You need like Ryan's like classical journalist, as he should be, going to the clubhouse, get those quotes, dead center shots. We need that. But sometimes you need a little bit more fan in your life on set,
I agree.
Although Luke lets it out every now and then. That's good.
Yeah. No, Luke has been significantly more fired up. He has been way more fired up than me over the last. Is the
donut shop closed or something?
Must be. He's definitely been more fired up than me over the last couple of weeks. And then like the other day, he gave, and I say this because it's you and you probably agree, but he gave Swanson a B- grade. And I told him when he put in Slack that he was giving Swanson a B-, it's like, the chat is going to be so mad at you. You are now becoming an engagement baiting podcaster like me.
It was always his destiny. Always his destiny.
So,
but
yeah.
All right, so let's log off here. Hour 30. I got to figure out how to add in some of these ad breaks here. Anyway, we'll sign off. We'll be back next Thursday. Corey should be back. What is it? October 25th. We'll be back.
Next World Friday, you mean? Yeah.
next Friday. What did I say? Thursday?
You said Thursday.
Yeah,
It is technically Thursday, but it's not going up until
my
Friday.
brain shuts off at this time of night, even though it's still technically early, I guess, for some people. You guys know how it is. I've been doing these podcasts for over 10 years. Okay. It is what it is. We'll be back next Friday, October 25th. Corey should be back. You guys are back on Monday, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yep.
And we'll go from there. You guys, are you done with your report cards for the players? Or
we still got some to go.
Who's on Monday?
I want to say we're gonna do Tyone on Monday, and
that should be a good grade. That should be an optimistic one.
Yeah. Well, we've been doing like a positive one, and then one that we know that will be negative. So we just get a mix.
Spacing it out.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.